quite intense for half an hour, but what we're going to cover is we're going to build up to learning about Stedman using 3 building blocks that we're going to be looking at. And there's going to be a load of new terminology and lingo, as is always delightful in bell ringing. Going to look at a few sort of tips and pitfalls, what can go wrong and things like that, and also where to start in terms of sort of, you know, how can I help, you know, practice this and so on. So very specifically and importantly, I'm not going to go over any bobs or singles, because that's kind of that's another talk, frankly. You know, that will take half an hour. So we're just basically going to be doing plain courses of Stedman. So tiny weeny bit of background. Stedman is actually named after a person, Fabian Stedman, who, as you can see, was around a long time ago. He was born in Halesowen, I think, somewhere in the West Midlands, and moved to London. And he was a printer by trade, but also a pioneer bell ringer. And he ended up as sort of something to do with the Bow Bells in London, and also master of the Ancient Society of Colleges, indeed, if it was even called that back then. He co-wrote and published Tintinologia, as you can see then, and then more importantly, I think, is he wrote and published Campanologia in 1677, which is really the sort of bedrock, if you like, of any theory related to change ringing, written specifically for bell ringers. And in that, he sort of offered and created himself a number of different new ways of ringing this change ringing fancy stuff. And one of those has stuck, and it's rung as often now as it probably was back then. And it's named after him, and that's what we call as Stedman. And I think one of the reasons why it's stuck is because it's actually musically very, very rewarding. Particularly when you get to learn to be able to do bobs and singles, you can just create so much beautiful music with it. But it's actually relatively simple to ring once you've understood the building blocks of how it works. So it's a principle as opposed to a method. And what that means is that all the bells do the same thing. And it can be rung, and it's usually rung on odd numbers of bells. So 5, you know, Stedman doubles, Stedman triples is on 7, Stedman caters is on 9, 11 is sinks, and it goes up to 15, and you can just keep extending it to as many numbers as you actually want, and it's usually odd numbers with a tenor behind, except for doubles. You can do that. You can ring it on even numbers, but it's slightly different, and we're not even going to go there. So because the treble is involved, it doesn't have leads. So this concept that you've heard me bleating on about leads and lead ends and know your place spells and all of that all goes out the window. And anyone who's just fed up of, you know, me sort of going on about, well, what's fourth place bell? You go, phew, I don't need to know all of that. However, the concept of leads is replaced by a concept of sixes, which will become important, and that's the first building block that I'm going to start with. So, what I'm starting with here is it's the first building block, and this, I'm not actually specifically talking about Stedman now. I'm just starting to where it comes from. So I want to start us off thinking theoretically about what you can do on 3 bells, and most of us will probably know that on 3 bells there are 6 different possible combinations of those 3 bells. So that's factorial 3 times 2 times 1. So 6 different rows that you can produce with 3 bells. So on the left-hand column, as you can see here, they've been written out in one particular way. So you've got 1, 2, 3 here, and if you swap over the first pair and have the third bell staying behind, and then swap over the second pair, if that makes sense, and have the first bell staying in one place, that's one way of creating all of those 6 individual possible rows. And we would recognize that as plain hunt, wouldn't we? I think most of us would recognize that as plain hunt. And in using Stedman parlance, if you like, one of the ways of referring to that way of combining the 6 rows, the sixes, is we would say that that's a quick 6. And what that means is it's a way of combining all the 6 rows, but with the bells leading hand stroke and backstroke. So if you look at the second here, it's coming down to lead at hand stroke, and it leads handstroke and backstroke, and then the next bell comes down to lead and leads handstroke and backstroke. And another way of referring to that concept of leading handstroke and backstroke is to lead right. It's got inverted commas around it. It's just a label. You'd say you're leading right. And it's that label of that 6 there, that combination of 6 different rows, is called a quick 6 in Stedman parlance. Now, another way of creating those 6 individual rows is by combining the order of the bell slightly differently, and this is the right hand column. So what we've done on the right hand side is, rather than swapping the first pair, 1 and 2, as you can see here, is we've started by swapping the second pair and leaving the bell in first place in the same place, and then we continue going like this. So, and then we swap over and that bell stays in the same place, and so on and so on. So it's actually accessing the same 6 rows but in a slightly different order. And in Stedman parlance, we would call that a slow 6, and that's because the bells are leading not now handstroke and backstroke, as you can see, but backstroke and handstroke. So you lead first of all with your first blow at lead would be a backstroke. Hopefully you can all see that. So the treble there is this row here is a handstroke. It's staying there and then it disappears off. So this concept of leading backstroke and handstroke is labelled leading wrong. It's a wrong lead, which is really weird language. You're just going to have to get your head around, accept the fact that it's not a description. It's a noun, if that makes sense. So this is the first building block, is introducing you to the concept of 6s, which is basically a block of work which could be a quick 6, i.e. people leading handstroke and backstroke, or it could be a slow 6, i.e. people leading back in hand. And you can see how that's being created. Now, to take that a tiny weeny bit further, what we could say, or no doubt what Stedman said back then, was, okay, that's pretty, 6 rows takes like about a nanosecond to ring, doesn't it? So what would happen if we then basically put these different 6s one after each other? So you start off here and you start off ringing a quick 6, and then what you would do, you get back to rounds here, and then what happened if we then went straight into a slow 6? And so what happens is that the bell comes down to lead and then it turns round again, and then you're in the slow 6 with the leading now happening back and hand. You can see I've written back and hand on the side, back and hand. And then we get back to the starting point. So 2, 1, 3, get back to, after 6 rows, we get back to the starting point that we started that 6 from. And what happens then if we shove it, we go into a quick 6 and we shove a quick 6 in next, and then a slow 6, and so on. And I don't need you to worry too much about this, because this is not Stedman. It's a building block of Stedman. And the idea and the important bit of this slide is that the building block I'm trying to get you through with is that you've got consecutive 6s sort of all butting up against each other. One will be a quick 6, one will be a slow 6, and you move into each one by, if you follow the path of the treble here, by changing direction. So here's the treble plain hunting, it gets a second place and then it changes direction, it goes back to lead again. Let's see if we can pick out another one. Here's the 2, it moves to the next 6, whichever 6 it is, from one 6 to another, you change direction and then carry on plain hunting. So the important bit of this slide of what I'm trying to build up the idea of is that you've got 6s butting up next to each other, alternating quick and slow, and basically your 3 bells are plain hunting, and you flick between the 2 6s by just sort of changing direction a bit. The other thing I want to show you on this slide, which is an important building block, is this green square here. When we ring Stedman, we start at this blow here. We start in the 4th blow of a quick 6. So we actually don't start right in the first blow of a quick 6 up here. We start in it, the starting point would be here. I'll come to that later on, but if you can just remember, when I start talking about 4th blow of a quick 6, it's this particular one here. Is actually when we say go Stedman, we're actually starting here. So we've got the 5th blow of a 6, the 6th blow of a 6, and then we change direction and we change into a slow 6. That's that. Is that anyone got any questions on this? Because all of a sudden I'm just using a massive language, which is probably, you know, a little bit quite new. Any questions at this stage? Okay. This is actually called Stedman singles. So if you do ever get short on a Sunday morning and you're fed up with ringing plain hunt on 3, you can actually, this is another thing to do. It's called Stedman singles. Okay. So where is this going and where is this taking us? So this is now building on this concept of alternating the 6s. I'm now going to introduce to you the slow work in Stedman. So I haven't even started to look at the whole of Stedman yet. I'm just looking at the slow work in Stedman. So here you can just about see these dotted lines, and this indicates 6 rows. So this is a completed 6. This 6 is a slow 6. We know that because we can see, for example, the 4 here. This is the hand stroke. The 4 here is its first blow at lead is a backstroke, so we know that's a slow 6. And then here we go, we've got an alternating, a quick 6, and then a slow 6, and a quick 6, and a slow 6. And all of this block of work from 3rd place down to lead with this blue line is called, inverted commas, the slow work. And it's really unfortunate that I've used the word slow in 2 different contexts here. You're just going to have to cope with the fact that this is labeled the slow work, but the slow work happens in whilst slow 6s and quick 6s are taking place all the way through the slow work. I'm so sorry about the lingo being a bit confusing. So let's have a look at what this slow work actually looks like. So you come in to the front 3 positions. It doesn't matter what's happening before then, that's a different building block. But you come in and the 6 changes. So you don't carry on plain hunting, you stay in the same place and you make 3rds. And that is labeled going in slow. So if you ever go wrong and a conductor shouts at you, "You're going in slow, Jack," or whatever, you know, that means you're at that specific point. And then you carry on plain hunting, because we all plain hunt in the middle of these 6s. And because it's a slow 6, when you get to lead, the first lead is a backstroke, then it's a hand stroke, and then you carry on plain hunting. And then the 6s swap or switch. So you change direction. So you go back to lead, and then you lead again. And because the 6s have swapped, we know now it's a quick 6. So we now know that we're leading hand and back now, hand back, and then we carry on plain hunting. We carry on plain hunting for 6 blows, and then the 6s swap. We're now so we change direction, and we're now in a slow 6. And because we change direction, it forces us to only do 1 blow at lead. So then we carry on plain hunting on 3. 3rds and down, and we get to the end of the 6, and the 6s are going to swap, so we change direction, so that forces us to do another point. Sometimes it's referred to, or sometimes it's referred to as a snap lead, point lead, but we do 1 blow at lead, and that's a backstroke, and then we carry on plain hunting on 3, out to 3rds, back down to lead, and lead because we're still plain hunting. And because this is a quick 6, it's a hand and back lead, and then we carry on plain hunting. The 6s are about to swap because we've done the 6, so we change direction, so we go back to lead again. And because it's a slow 6, the leads are back and hand, and then we do 3rds, and then we go out. It's basically plain hunting on 3, but you swap directions every 6 blows, and it forms this blue line here. Now there's various different chunks as you go through this blue line, which have very specific labels, which are really important. You must learn these names. So going in slow, and then this combination of work of place, place, point, place, place, and then away again is called your first whole turn. I have no idea why it's called first whole turn, it just is. It also has another name for it, which is used in other methods. It's used in Bristol an awful lot, and it's sometimes called Stedman places. So if this could be referred to as Stedman lead. Just a little tip which might be useful if you start to learn other places. But in Stedman, this is called, this whole block here is first whole turn, and you must memorize these bits of lingo. And then you go out to thirds. That doesn't have a name, but the really important bit in the slow work in Stedman is that every single time you're in thirds place, you make thirds. It's never a point. It's never one blow in thirds. It's always two. So we've got one here, and we've got one here. And then we come back down to lead. And this is a point lead at hand stroke, and it's called your first half turn. I've no idea why, it just is. And then we go out and we do two blows and thirds, because we always do two blows and thirds. And then we come down to a point lead, which is at backstroke, and it's called your second half turn, which is logical, isn't it? Because you've done one, so you now do another. That's at hand, that's at back. And then you go out to thirds place and you make thirds, because you always make thirds when you're in thirds place in Stedman slow work. Come down to lead, and now this is your last whole turn. And it's the same pattern, isn't it, as this one. So you come in, place, place, snap, place, place, or place, place, point, place, place, whatever language you want to use. And again, that's the whole block there is called last, your last whole turn. And different from this one started back and hand. This one is now starting hand and back. And then you make thirds and you're going out slow and you're going out. You're leaving the front three places. And again, you make thirds because you always stay two blows in thirds place in the Stedman slow work. And that whole block of work is called the Stedman slow work. Just a few things to help with the learning of it. It's actually symmetrical. So if you were to divide it in half at this pink dotted line, you can see that you know, it's the same work above it and below that dotted line, as you can see. Another little tip, it might be helpful, might not, I don't know, but just, you know, so it's always no harm in having anchor points to hang off. Is the work that you do with your first whole turn, you also do in your first half turn. So if we look at this a little bit more closely, this blue line is actually the treble, isn't it? So as you can see, it comes down to lead and it does it 0.2 seconds place over the 7th. And then it goes to lead again. And when it comes round to its first half turn, it's doing its point lead around the 7th again. So the treble and the 7th in this particular bit are actually working together. They're kind of pointing in and out of each other, if that makes sense. And similarly, that same concept happens again in the second half of the slow work. So the bell that the treble is pointing with is the 6th, if you can see that here. And then when it comes to do its last whole turn, the treble, the 6th comes to it and does its point, and the treble points around it. So it's just useful to, you know, help with rope sight and things like that. Something else to hang off. And another little tip with all of this stuff around slows and quicks, they're nouns, so they're not, it's a terminology, it's not about speed. And I remember when I was learning Stedman, I had shall we say, an impasse with my dad, because I just could not get into my head how I was going down to the front if I was going slowly. I was like, you know, I have to go up to the back, and he just couldn't see what I wasn't getting and all of that until we eventually realized that I was thinking it was literally I had to ring slowly. It's like, no, it's just a name. It's just a name. So all of these times, slows and quicks, it's nothing to do with speed. They're just names, if that's helpful. So the final thing on this slide is I've just pointed out here that actually where the third and the second bell start. If you remember, I said that they started in the 4th row of a quick 6, and there it is. So the third starts there. It's a quick 6, as you can see. We also know it's a quick 6 because they're ringing hand and back, and it starts in the 4th row. So the third stays one blow in thirds place and then comes down and does its first half turn. So it does a point lead at hand stroke and then goes out. And then the second starts down here, still a quick 6, and it's the 4th row of a quick 6, and it starts there. So the second, it goes Stedman, and it's basically starting straight away doing its last whole turn. So it does a full lead at hand stroke point seconds, and then back to lead, backstroke and hand, thirds and out. Okay, so that's the hard bit of Stedman, and it just needs memorizing. It's you can view that bit as one blue line, one block. I view it as one block, and I just know as I'm working my way through it. All right, this is my first half turn. All right, this is my second half turn. Sometimes if I get lost and I know I'm doing a half turn, which one is it? Have I done one or two? I don't know. If I find myself doing the half turn at backstroke, I know it's my second because I've memorized the fact that it's the second one happens at backstroke. So it's quite useful to have these little extra anchor points in to just to keep you on that blue line. Because when Stedman goes wrong, it usually goes wrong because the front work's gone wrong. Someone's gone wrong on here. So as many anchor points as you've got, learning this blue line is helpful. Any questions on that slide? Okay, so building block number 2 is this thing called double dodging. So a second little whole block of important stuff in Stedman are these double dodges. You might have done double dodges before if you've rung bobs in or calls in Grantser, because they happen in Grantser. If you haven't, you probably won't have come across, maybe you have, I'm not sure. So let's have a look at how they work. So most of us know a dodge, don't we? As we're going, like if we look at this red line, we're going in one direction and then we take a step backwards and then we carry on in that direction. And if we do that once, it's called a dodge. If we do it twice, so step back there, go up and then step back there. If we do it twice, it's called a double dodge. If there happen to be 3 dodges, it would be called a triple dodge. And there are some methods with triple dodges in them, some methods with 4 dodges, some with 5 dodges in them, and so on. So double dodge is when you step back and you do a dodge, 2 dodges like that, and then you carry on in the direction you were going. Now, the crucial thing about Stedman double dodges is that they happen, is where they happen. So most of us have probably been, unless you're in Grantser, you've probably been learning about dodges in bob doubles or bob minor in 3/4 and 5/6. Now in Stedman they don't happen like that. It happens on odd numbers, and we've already learnt that the front 3 bells, the bells in the first, positions 1, 2, and 3, are involved doing usually plain hunting and Stedman slow work. So the next position along is 4/5, and so the double dodging happens in 4/5. And if you happen to be ringing Stedman triples, it then happens in 6/7, and it then happens in 8/9 if you're ringing Stedman caters, and in 10/11, and so on and so on and so on. So basically, they happen in these positions of 4/5, 6/7. And what happens is basically, you can't quite see it on the right hand side maybe, but if you look at this brown line here, it's just finishing off a double dodge, and then in a particular position, doesn't really matter, it could be 4/5, it could be 8/9, and then it carries on to the next position, and then it does 1, 2 dodges, and then it could carry on to the next position and do another 2 dodges and so on. But here it's lying behind, and then it does its double dodge down, and then it goes down to the next position. So basically you're sort of doing a very grandiose sort of plain hunting out to the back, if you like, but actually you're doing it by double dodging your way out to the back, lying behind, and double dodging your way down to the front again. So once you get the idea of double dodging, relatively easy to do, and you can extend that all the way out onto as many numbers as you want. But basically above thirds place in Stedman, you double dodge. Couple of tips: the blocks of double dodging always happen in pairs. So if you think about Stedman doubles, you've faffed around on the front 3, and then you've gone out, and then you do your double dodge 4/5 up, you lie behind, and you do your double dodge 4/5 down. So there's 2 blocks, if you like, of double dodging there. If you were to ring Stedman triples, you'd faff around on the front, you'd come out and you do your double dodge 4/5 up, double dodge 6/7 up. That's two lots of double dodging, double dodge 6, 7 down, double dodge 4, 5 down. So you end up with four sort of blocks of double dodging, and someone keeps extending. So there's always, in a playing course, there's the double dodging always comes, and there's always even numbers of them in a playing course. The other thing about double dodging, you have to work your bell in them. Obviously in ringing it doesn't apply, but when we get back onto ropes, you have to actually work them. Have to make sure that you go down and then back up, properly pull in, then properly hold up, and properly pull in, then properly hold up. It's really tempting to sort of curve the edges of the double dodge and kind of float your way through it. It really annoys me. So you have to really work at them. It's in that sense. And I don't think I've mentioned this. Did I mention? I talked about it being in 4/5, but of course, if it is in 4/5 and odd numbers, what that actually means is that the dodge is at hand stroke. So if you're, this is, let's call this fifth place, hand stroke, fourth place, that actually the dodge going back to change direction, you're holding up at hand and then pulling it back, and holding up at hand and pulling it back. And that is the other way round than how we do it in things like Plain Bob and Cambridge and Kent and that sort of stuff, because those are, the holding up, the dodge, if you like, is a backstroke, and this is the other way around. So when you do it for the first time, it will feel different, but actually what you're doing is is relatively easy to understand, but it might feel different first time in terms of manipulating the bell. On ringing it won't make any difference, but on the rope it might feel different. Any questions with that? Okay, so that's the second building block of Stedman that I want to talk about. And then the third is on the front again. And so we've talked about the slow work, that great big block of stuff that you need to memorize. And we've talked about the rest of it above thirds places, padded out with double dodging. And then there's one final little bit of Stedman, which is called the quick work. And it's really easy. And sometimes in Stedman, rather than coming in and doing the slow work, all of that big block, what you do instead is you come in and you do the quick work. And basically, here's the quick work going on here. It's a quick 6, and we know it's a quick 6 because the bell's leading hand and back. And basically what you do is you plain hunt in, I don't know why there's a bit of red missing, you plain hunt in, you do you lead right, which is a normal lead, isn't it? It's a hand back lead, and you plain hunt out again, and then you go out to 4/5, and then you're involved in your double dodging. So in terms of a blue line, you actually just plain hunt from 5th place down, do a right lead or a normal lead, a hand back lead, and then back you go out again. And it's called going in quick. So if you go wrong and a conductor ever shouts at you, "You're going in quick," it just basically means go down to a normal lead. And I think we can all do that. This shouldn't be difficult at all. And again, just to note, quick work is a term. It's not necessarily related to speed. You don't do anything differently in speed apart from just normal changing of speed for plain hunting. Okay, so we've had a look at the slow work. We've understood that that is made up of changing 6s, which basically means that sometimes you're leading right, sometimes you're leading wrong. We've had a look at the fact that above thirds place, it's padded out with all these double dodges. And we've had a look at the fact that there's something else happens on the front, which is it's a quick 6, it's quick work, and it's basically just plain hunting with a hand back lead. So let's put it all together. So I only show this because this is a print off from CompLib. And this shows Stedman broken down by lead end, and when on my very first talk I sort of bleated on, didn't I, about you must learn your play spells and all of this sort of stuff, and look at the grid, and isn't it interesting? Actually, I don't ring Stedman like this, so actually I don't worry about looking at it like this. I think this is not particularly helpful. So you'll be relieved to know that when I put it together, and this is, I'm so sorry it's so small, I look at it this way as one whole block instead. And to show it as one block, I have to show it vertically on a landscape based slide. It's really hard to do, so I'm sorry about that. It's really small. But this is Stedman doubles in order to save space. So basically one whole block of Stedman doubles. It starts on the 4th row of a quick 6, so the treble is going out. And then it does its double dodge up, lies behind, double dodge down. Then it comes back into 3rds place, and it starts all of its slow work. So it makes 3rds, it does its first whole turn. That is back and hand. If we remember, it starts back and hand. That's its first whole turn there. It makes 3rds because we always make 3rds when we get to 3rds place in the slow work. It comes down and does a point at hand stroke, which is its first half turn, goes back out, makes 3rds because we always make 3rds when we get to 3rds place, comes back down, does a point at backstroke, which is his second half turn, out to 3rds, last whole turn, out to 3rds, and then it goes out again and it gets involved with its double dodge 4-5 up, lies behind, 4-5 down, and then it goes in quick. And it's a flow. And the key thing here is that you would just keep going on and on and on with that. And each time you come into the front, you alternate which way in you go. So we can see that the treble is coming out quick there because it's not making 3rds, it's just doing its plain hunting. So it's just done its quick 6 or its quick work. So we know it faffs around in 4-5, we know next time it has to go in slow. There it does. Goes out, does its double dodging, and then it alternates, so it goes back in quick. And that's the same on any bell. So wherever you start, and you can see you've got that, I'll talk about the starts in a minute, wherever you start, each time you go into the slow in a plain course, you alternate. One time you're going slow, one time you're going quick, one time you're going slow, one time you go, and so on and so on and so on. And that's why I think Stedman's relatively easy, because it's padded out with lots of double dodging. We can do that. And then you just have to go, am I going in slow or am I going in quick? And you alternate which way round you do that. So I said I'd look at starts. 4th row of a quick 6. And what that means for bells which are double dodging, so here we've got the 4th and the 5th starting. What that means for bells which are double dodging is it grants a start. So you're halfway through a double dodge, and it's there. I don't know if you can quite see it. So basically the 4th will go up to 5th place, back to 4th, and then that's its double dodging finished. So then it moves on and it goes on to the front. And because we know it starts on the 4th row of a quick 6, we know that the next 6 is a slow 6. So the 4th has finished its double dodging in 4-5 down, and it's going, oh, which way am I going to go in? Well, we know it's now a slow 6. So there it is. It starts off going in slow. And then the 5th is doing its 4-5 up. And it starts it halfway through the double dodge, so it finishes it off by coming down to 4th place and then going back to 5th place, lying behind. It does its double dodging 4-5 down. Now, when it starts, we know that it starts on the 4th row of a quick 6. So we know that as it's ringing here is a quick 6 going on the front. Does its lie behind, and when it's doing this block of double dodging, that's now a slow 6, isn't it? We know that because they alternate. So it finishes that 6. There's a slow 6 going on in the front, which means that when it's the 5th's turn to go into the front, the 6's alternate. So we know it's therefore going to be a quick 6, and therefore we know that the 5th has to go in quick, which it does there. So you can actually, if someone says, oh, can you ring the 6th, the Stedman triples, you'd have to sit and work out, right, I'm starting on a 6-7. The next one I'm going to be in 4-5. 4-5 downs, right? That's going to be a slow 6. So when it's my turn to go in, right, it's going to be a quick 6. So you can actually kind of work it out that way if that helps in that setting. Treble's actually arguably the easiest place if you're starting to learn, because you have this really nice safe 5 blows to settle in, and you know, you can have a good running stab at this slow work all in one go. I think the second and third are arguably harder because you're sort of halfway through it and so on. But anyway, that's what Stedman looks like altogether. They're the building blocks. There's the slow work, padded out with double dodging, and then the quick work. That's what it looks like altogether. Any questions with that? The last thing I want to talk about is this thing about which way do I go in. So before I go on to that, any questions with any of that? Okay, so I said earlier on, Stedman often goes wrong on the front, and it can go wrong because people haven't, you know, they've made a mistake in the blue line. And another way it can go wrong is people aren't quite sure which way to go in, because they forget. Or when you come up to bobs and singles, you'll understand why. This becomes a much more sort of pertinent question because the rules change with bobs and singles. So the anyway, so there is an article, you can have a look at it later if you want, because I think the slides will be saved, written by Simon Linford, who's a very experienced bell ringer, and it's a very tongue-in-cheek article. It's very cheeky and naughty, about how people remember which way to go in, and just talks about guessing and all of this sort of stuff. However, there are some methods in there which are very valid methodologies, which I want to refer to here. Clearly, the easiest thing that you should be doing is you should try and remember, and you should just try and remember, right, I went in slow last time, so this time, next time I'm going down onto the front, it will be in quick. But you know, we don't, do we? And I don't, and sometimes even now I get it wrong. So there are 3 different methodologies to try and remember or work out which way you go in. So the first one, he refers to it as method number 5, and it's called the diary method. I think, you know, when we all used to have the physical ring wheel diary, I think it was in there. And this is what this methodology looks like. So let's say you ring the treble and you're coming down to 4/5 down. So there's stuff going on the front with 3 bells. You're coming down to 4/5 down. This particular, your first blow in 4th place, which is a backstroke, what it's saying in this methodology is take a note of which bell you're ringing over. And here it's bell A. And then you carry on doing your double dodging. Don't worry about this one. Carry on doing your dodging. And then when it's your turn to go into the front, you get to this, your first blow in 3rd place. If it's over that same bell, bell A, it means it's a slow 6 and you go in slow. So you wait in 3rd place. Don't worry too much about what's going on the front as to why it dictates that. But the methodology is when you come down to your 4/5 down, that blow there, note who you ring over. If you then ring over it again in your first blow in 3rd place, this blow here in 3rd place, if you ring over it again, you go in slow. Take a note of it here. Here it is, bell A. It's your first blow in 4th place. When you get to your first blow in 3rd place and it's not there, it's not bell A, it means it's a quick 6 and you go in quick. Okay, so that's quite a handy, probably most of you will be able to manage that, I would have thought, certainly in the tower when the rope sight's a lot more easy to spot. If you ring over the bell you ring over in your first blows in 4th place, if you ring over it again in your first blow in 3rd place, you go in slow. If you don't ring over it, you go in quick. Okay, so that's one method. It works if bell A is right. You know, bell A or the front work has to be right for you to spot that. So that's why it's always good to have other methodologies up your sleeve. Now, another one is to watch what's happening at the lead. So let's say you're still on the treble and you're in 4/5 and you're having a little minor panic because you can't quite remember which way to go in. If you can happen to spot which way round people are leading whilst you're in 4/5, then that will dictate to you what you do. So in this case, the bells are leading hand and back. So B is leading hand and back, then C is leading, and A is leading. So you get 3 chances to kind of spot it. Oh, I think they're leading hand and back. Let's just watch it. Yeah, okay. The next one's leading hand and back. So that tells you a hand and back lead tells you it's currently, when you're in 4/5, a quick 6, which means when it's your turn to go in, the 6s swap, and that means you go in slow. And then the opposite is true. If you're in 4/5 and you're watching the bells at lead and you can see that they're swapping so that they're now leading back and hand, like they are on this side, that means when you're in 4/5, it is currently a slow 6. So when it's your turn to go in, the 6s swap. That means it will be a quick 6, so that means you go in quick. Okay. So watching what's happening at lead and going, right, it is currently a blah, blah, blah lead, therefore I need to go in the opposite way. That's another methodology. I use that quite a lot. And then the final approach that I recommend, and again, I use this quite a lot, and it's sort of tip number 6, methodology number 6 in Simon's article, is to watch your course bell or watch the bell that you're following down from the back. It would be another way of describing that if the word course bell brings horror to you. Watch the bell that you're following down from the back. So let's have a see what this means from the treble, this red one. So the treble comes out, this is the start. Treble comes out, 4/5 up. And because this is Stedman triples, whichever bell it rings with at the back, so in Stedman triples it's 6/7, that's the bell that the treble will need to watch. So in this case, it's the 5th. So it goes, right, okay, my first set of double dodging when I hit the back is with the 5th. Right, I'm going to watch the 5th. So you lie behind, and then you on the treble are ringing 6/7 down, and you know, because you're following the treble down to lead, you can see the dodges are in parallel there, can't you? The 5th is there, you're following it down to lead. You say, right, I'm watching the 5th. You come down to 4/5, and the 5th has gone from 4/5 down onto the front. And if you can happen to spot that the 5th has sort of disappeared away from you, it's because it's gone in quick. And another way of noticing that is, did I ring over the 5th when I hit 4th place? No, I didn't, because it disappeared away from me because I'm following it and it disappeared away from me. Right, so the 5th has gone in quick. That means because I'm following the 5th, and when it's my turn in the next 6, that means I go in slow. And then lo and behold, you do. And then there's a whole chunk of line missing here because it's it's for explanation. So it's finishing its slow work and it's coming out. There, it's finishing its last whole turns, making thirds, 4/5 up, 6/7 up. Right, so it's hit the back again, and it goes, right, I need to remember, I need to follow and watch the bell that I'm just dodging with when I'm hitting the back. And this time it's the 3rd. So it's right, I'm going to watch the 3rd. So you lie behind, you do your double dodging at the back, and the 3rd is ahead of you in one position ahead of you. It's in 4/5 down. That's fine. You can see the dodges are in parallel. You're going down to 4/5, so the 3rd is going down below 4/5, so it's going down onto the front. That's the point that you need to watch that bell. If you saw it disappearing off ahead of you, you'd know it's going in quick, but you don't. You ring over it, because it's stopped in 3rd place to make thirds because it's about to go in slow, and you ring over it there. Now, if it's going in slow, when it's your turn in a 6's time, it means you go in quick because the 6's swap. So that's another methodology. I hope that makes sense. This methodology applies on any number in Stedman, but it's the bell that you watch when you get to the back. So if you're ringing in Stedman sinks. You get to the back in 10-11, and it's the bell that you dodge with when you get to the back in 10-11, and you watch it going down ahead of you, and you're kind of dodging in parallel all the way down, if that makes sense. And then you watch what it does, and then you do the opposite. Okay. So I think I have one more slide because it's probably information overload now. One more slide. So just in terms of if you're building up to Stedman for the first time, there are a couple little things you can practice to sort of chunk it down and practice. So the first was practicing that Stedman singles that we looked at very earlier on, and that enables you to practice this concept of plane hunting on 3 and changing directions and basically seeing what it feels like to swap between slows and quick 6s. And the other thing that you can practice is this method called cloister, or cloisters. I think it's cloister technically. And this enables you to practice the other 2 building blocks, which is the double dodging and then the going in quick. And cloister is assembled by, it has 2 hunt bells, a bit like Grancer. Grancer has a hunt bell and it has the treble, which you could sort of argue it does the hunt bellish type stuff. So it has 2. So in this one, the second and the third are hunt bells. They are not ringing cloister. They are hunt bells, and they're just plain hunting to thirds and back. But the other bells, 1, 4, and 5, are ringing cloister. And basically what they're doing is they're doing double dodging. So let's look at the 5th. It's doing it starts halfway through, it finishes its double dodge, it's doing double dodging, it runs in quick and does double dodging, and so on. And so it's just a nice little way of practicing the double dodging and the running in quick. It's quite nice, actually. I also we use it quite a lot at Bampton because as well, just because it enables people who are less experienced just to be able to plane hunt on 3 and still be involved as well. It's quite a nice little thing to have up your sleeve. So thank you to Janet for introducing that to me. So okay, I think that's what I wanted to cover. I'm going to stop sharing now, but if anyone's got any questions, I can go back up